Well, welcome this evening. On behalf of Engage Barrie, I'd like to welcome you to the all candidates meetings for Wards 1 and 3. My name is Rob Romanek, and I'm also joined with some other volunteers from Engage Barrie. Anita, John, and James are here to help out. So Engage Barrie was formed to create an equitable community, to mobilize and empower people, and to build an engaged local democracy. To that end, we thank you, both candidates and community, for attending tonight's event. Before we begin, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge that we are gathered today on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi nations, collectively known as the Three Fires Confederacy. Lake Simcoe and Kempenfelt Bay are part of the Upper Canada Treaties, and the city of Barrie is part of Treaty 16, signed in 1815, and Treaty 18, signed in 1818. As a settler, when I listen and learn more about the traditional cultures of this land, I come to further value the importance of shared history, storytelling, stewardship of our lands, and cooperation among people. As we listen to our candidates this evening, let's take the time to hear their stories and listen to their intentions for the stewardship of the city that we call our home. Thank you very much. Today we have Clare Riepma from Ward 1 and Ann-Marie Kungl from Ward 3. Unfortunately, it's always a challenge to find a time that works for all the councillors. Hopefully some of the councillors who can't attend this evening will give us some written responses to some of the questions, and we'll be able to post those on our site as well. We record all these meetings, and you can find them all at our engagebarrie.org website. And so if you have friends who can't make it and can encourage them to go watch these, that'll be amazing. So tonight's meeting is kind of structured like a job interview. Each candidate will be given the opportunity to answer the same questions. They have 3 questions that have been provided in advance that they have formulated their answers for. These answers will be timed. Then we'll also have just introductions from the candidates first. And then after that, once they've done the introductions and the 3 prepared questions, then we'll turn it over to the audience. And so we encourage you at any point in time, if you have any questions, to use the Q&A panel. You can access that from, if you hover over your Zoom window in the bottom section, there's a Q&A section. You can open that up and you can post your questions there. You have the option to post anonymously if you feel more comfortable doing that. So we encourage you to do that. With that, I think we'll get started. So welcome, Clare and Ann-Marie. Thank you for joining us. So what we'll do is we'll start off with each candidate. I'm going to switch modes here to speaker view, so you'll get to focus on the candidates as they give their responses. Switch here to, and so we'll start off with Ann-Marie. And welcome, Ann-Marie. We invite you to take a minute and a half and give us an introduction of yourself and your objectives as a councillor.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you as an extension to Engage Barrie for creating this opportunity. I know residents have been asking and do care about access to information to get to know your candidate. So it's always a pleasure to have a platform to share why I'm running again for Ward 3. So I am the incumbent. I ran in the by-election for Ward 3, and I have been representing the ward since March of 2020. And I'm running again because I'm pretty excited about the next 4 years, recognizing, people I'm hearing have anxiety about affordability, are concerned about how we're going to manage growth on the go forward. But I see great hope and promise in actually leveraging our strengths, both as a collective around our business community, our resident strengths, but also our city. So I've learned and grown quite a bit in the role. I want to still support some of the work that we've been focused on. And I had been represented over the past 3 years on about 9 different related city committees, from seniors to housing, affordability with respects to just growth. I am very proud of the way in which the city has, through staff, managed some of our strategic plans, be it asset management to our financial framework and investment strategy. I think with a mindful council, we can actually do really good work over the next 4 years. So my passion and background is actually coming out of health and public health, and I do a lot of work with not-for-profits. My personal values really align to the work at a municipal level around helping to make decisions and helping to represent residents to make sure that their voice reaches council. I've received really lovely feedback. I've been asked to run again. I get joy in the work that I've been able to do. And so it would be an honor to represent Ward 3 again. A couple of pieces about running for council.
I'm going to jump in here.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just from a timing perspective.
Sure.
So no, that's great. And again, it will be also, you'll get a time to wrap up as well afterwards. But I just with the, especially the early sections, just want to keep things going at the pace that we've set for. So thank you for that introduction. Claire, you're up. Looking forward to hearing your comments.
All right, thank you. And thanks to Engage Barrie as well. I think your work is really important to educate the general public and to encourage them to get involved because it's far too easy as someone that's in office to be talking to themselves and to talk to people that think like you, and it's much better to be able to hear what the community's got to say. I'm currently the councillor for Ward 1. I love the job. I live in Ward 1. I have my business in Ward 1. I'm passionate about Ward 1. And I'm running again to keep working on some of the things that we've started to do. One of the things primarily, and this relates to Ward 1 primarily, is road repair. We've never had a really good list of roads that really need fixing and a timetable to fix them. We now have that. And so, you know, Duckworth is next year, and Grove and Nelson and Codrington and Blake Street. So all of those kinds of things are really important, I think, for me to finish. Secondly, we have a real issue around, especially around the college area, with housing that is not up to standard. And we've started much more enforcement in the proactive property standards enforcement. And that's something that we really need to ramp up. And I think we may have to come back and revisit other alternatives in that area. And then thirdly, we have a series of development proposals that we have in the pipeline. And I would like to also work on those to bring those to fruition to make sure that they really fit into the Ward 1 community. I'm a civil engineer and a city planner. I was born on a farm, and as a result, I know what it's like to work hard for very little money. I was widowed when I was in my mid-40s, left me as a single parent with 5 children. And I've been fortunate again to get married again 20 years ago. And now Judy and I, we have 6 kids between us and 18 grandchildren.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that. It's great to have those introductions. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump into the 3 prepared questions. And you'll each have 2.5 minutes for this. I hope you're seeing the hands come up okay as a notification for your time. So once again, we'll give you a notice when there's about 30 seconds left. So the first question has to deal with housing. And what we'll do is we'll start with Claire on this one, and then Ann-Marie will answer, and then we'll back and forth. And I know you guys aren't running the same wards, but these are questions that concern all of Barrie, and as a team, you guys will be making those decisions. Housing. Access to affordable quality housing is a fundamental human right, which affects our physical and mental health, prosperity, and community. The final report of the City of Barrie's Housing Affordability Task Force has given us a blueprint of how to tackle the housing crisis. Which of these recommendations would you prioritize? How do you intend to support housing development in a way that addresses the needs of all income levels, abilities, ages, and stages, while also being environmentally responsible and working towards more diverse, integrated community building? Claire.
Okay, thanks Thanks, Rob. Yes, and I'm trying to ignore the hand as it comes up. We had the Affordable Housing Task Force, and they came up with a series of recommendations that I think are very useful, including as of right housing on institutional land, and we're diligently pursuing that. Also, redeveloping some of our commercial areas to include residential. And we've just seen actually at our last meeting, a proposal for something like 400 units at Park Place. And I think that that creates a really great opportunity. And I think there are other opportunities around the city, especially like on Mapleview and at Mount. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of opportunity for doing that. The recommendations also included a recommendation for smaller homes. I'm a big fan of that. I think sometimes we build houses and apartments that are way too big. We need to start looking at smaller ones so that they are more affordable. We now have a dedicated person on staff that deals with affordability. I think the other part of affordability for me is we've done some good work in our official plan. We've got 15% is the policy now of affordable units for every project that is approved. But the other part that we've done is we've said there's an option for cash in lieu. Because at the moment, we've had a lot of proposals with a lot of apartments and townhouses and other units. And when it turns out, there's really no affordable units at all. And that is a problem. And that's why I think that saying to a builder, yes, you can build no cash in lieu, or you can build no affordable housing, but you have to contribute to money for the city to do that. I think that is something that's very viable for the future. And I see that as us having to put that to work and get that done in our next term. We've also got second suites and third suites. But again, many of those have not turned out to be affordable. And I think we need to do a whole lot more work on that.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, Ann-Marie, you're up.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be a member of the Mayor's Task Force for Affordable Housing. And that was an interesting group of individuals that brought in engineering, development, planning perspectives. And I think the recommendations far and wide, I support them all being implemented, but of course from a priority, I do have a couple. In particular, I think if those watching haven't read the report, I would encourage them to do so because I think it helps to shift our conversation. One of the most important pieces, I think, because we get caught in this conversation of affordable housing, but affordable for who? And so now we're starting to talk about more attainable housing, differences in affordability based on having different stock options. So single bedroom versus a 2-bedroom versus a single detached home. So how do we help people actually get housing online sooner and incentivize that through better policies or progressive policies, but also then after you access a home, how can we retain it? And so that report talks a bit about our shortage, specifically in Barrie, about the mid and low cost rental housing. And in general, there are 2 areas of focus that these recommendations tie to. It was about land availability and funding for subsidized housing. Deeper into the report, I would say my key priority areas and supplement to what Claire has shared is really looking at land availability. So the new foundations program launched, I think last December, that should be coming back. The next term of council, I think, really needs to focus in on how do we move forward opportunities, be it areas that have been made, identified as feasible for development. How do we help them actually take the next step? So we've supported as a city and funded the feasibility cost to actually look at, as an example, extra property that may be owned by a church that could be utilized and rethought of as supporting residential. I'd also like to look at exempting certain classes of development. And I think the recommendation in particular talked about a task force. I think a key opportunity is that we've got discretionary committees. We should have an affordable housing committee. We should include diverse conversations and actually look at how we implement some of these recommendations. And then again, with that dedicated resource staff, it's really looking at prioritizing affordable housing developments. And to Claire's point, we have a community improvement fund that touches on affordable housing, but I think we need cash in lieu. So how do we really target incentivizing more affordable units and getting those online sooner? And I think there's great opportunity that's possible for us to actually be moving ahead units and developments and letting the development community know that this is a priority for us.
Great, thanks, Ann-Marie.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. Just as a reminder, we've got 2 more of these prepared questions we're going to go, but if any questions come up for you all, for the attendees while you're listening, please go ahead and enter them into the Q&A section and we'll get them queued up. So the next question, Ann-Marie, you'll answer first, and this has to deal with youth. What plans do you have for attracting and retaining more young people to and in our city? And I'm going to say that by young people, we're defining them as late teens, 20s, and early 30s, including plans for ensuring more inclusive, vibrant, and a sustainable environment for them. How will you attract the quality and well-paying, employment opportunities to help give them a more secure future? And what programs and services can the city provide to help them build their skills and support young entrepreneurship? Ann-Marie.
Thank you. And it's a long multi-part question, so forgive me, I'll look at my notes to make sure I get all the key aspects answered. When I look at what we offer as a city around more inclusive, vibrant, and sustainable environments for youth, there's so much information at our fingertips for anyone looking to make Barrie home and also to look at, is this a place I want to both live, work, and play? And I think one of the biggest gems that we have is our economic and creative development team. So Invest Barrie might be familiar to some, and that's its own kind of website with a mass amount of resources. But through that, 3 core elements of what we offer through that staff department are how to plan and grow your own business. We've got resources at hand, and we've got pretty amazing relationships. The small business center that's co-located with the Sandbox downtown, you can walk in and make a quick connection. Access to grants, especially for that age group. We've seen a summer program where we've had dozens upon dozens of individuals come forward with a concept around, I'm thinking about launching a business. I don't know about how to go about being an entrepreneur. And they have all the tools accessible to them in addition to funding. We have such a strong relationship with the Barrie Chamber, Georgian College, linkages to our Downtown Business Association, Lakehead, our public library, and even through Georgian Angel Investing. It's pretty amazing when you look at what access you have. So even around Georgian, students coming out, even from attracting them to come as a student and to stay, we see stats around 85% job placement within 6 months. Lakehead, we're seeing 97% employment within 2 years of graduating. Within our department, we're also looking at different opportunities. And even this month, we've got 2 huge summits. So one is manufacturing, I think, happening next week on the 19th. We have the Mayor's Innovations Award that bring recognition and kind of awareness about what we're doing around multiple sectors. And we're seeing a lot of growth. So we already know that we are targeting 150,000 jobs by 2051. And we've got interactive mapping. You can go online now through the services we offer through the city and look at available lands, look at the status of where you could potentially grow a business if you're looking to acquire or even retrofit an existing infrastructure. So around the programs that we support, the Accelerate Summit, that's coming up October 25th to 27th, that's $75. So from even being able to access really great high-end keynote speakers and information and strategy deployment around marketing to, how do you look at return on investment? I believe Barrie as a city, just through our connections, has just a vibrant business community and one that also is quite embracing of entrepreneurs.
Thanks, Ann-Marie.
You're welcome.
That's great. Claire, same question for you.
Yeah, and I think Ann-Marie did a great job answering it. The city has a great amount of resources available for young people who want to get into a business or want to accomplish anything in the city. I think that when people say young people are our future, I just tend to disagree with that. I think young people are our present. They're here already, and we need to really work with them and encourage them to get involved and to really find their place here in the city rather than becoming a commuter. I've got, I chair the Town and Gown Committee and I chair the Heritage Barrie Committee. And I've got to say, you know, we have young people on those committees and the contribution they make is just amazing. And I would really like to encourage all of our young people to get involved in the municipal process, get involved in the support committees, because that's where their voice is really heard. I mean, active transportation and sustainability as well. We have like, there's such a great resource, and you know, we do have to change the direction of the city as we grow. And who are we building it for except for our younger folks? And they're the ones that should have a really significant say in how that proceeds. They're the ones that are going to live there and shape the city of the future. I think the kinds of things that we need to do for our youth is to create a city that has a more wholesome, well-rounded, balanced kind of environment. If we want to encourage employers to hire, to stay here and to hire younger people, they need to have the services that they need, such as sports facilities, arts, affordable housing, all of those kinds of things that brings a well-balanced lifestyle. And I think we certainly have the basis for that here. We just need to expand on some of those things. And one of those things I think is a performing arts center that we have to really start thinking about seriously. And I'm very pleased that that is starting to move ahead. But I think it's that those are the kinds of things we need to think about when we think about youth. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. I know these questions are they're multi-tiered and a lot. So you're both, the two of you and all the candidates have been coming forward and presenting, trying to distill those ideas down into the 2.5 minutes is a challenge, and we really appreciate your thoughtfulness for that. So the final of the advanced questions is about growth, and this is another multi-tiered one. So looking forward and beyond Barrie's. Looking forward and beyond Barrie's housing concerns, how will you handle the growth of our population and the opportunities and challenges this can generate? What are your 3 priorities to make our community more equitable, safe, and affordable for all residents as we grow, while providing the infrastructure, public transportation, green space, recreation, and other city services required by this increasing population? And how will you work towards eliminating systemic barriers, including race, gender, ability, age, and economic status, to ensure Barrie is a safe and a welcoming city for all residents? Claire, if you can answer first, please.
Yeah, that's a big question, and I could take 10 minutes instead of a couple of minutes, but let's just remember that over the next 30 years, the city of Barrie is going to double in size, about 300,000 people. That's a massive amount of growth. And we are going to see intensification of housing, and we're going to see much more activity in our city. We already have 19,000 units that are approved that have not yet been built. And that accounts for about 45,000 people right there. So what we have done is we have a new official plan, and that new official plan really tries to look at how do we intensify our city? How do we make it a great city? and make it work for everyone. And there's an old saying, if you can make it work for a toddler and for a 95-year-old, you've really accomplished something. And that's what we really need to start looking at, making room for everyone that is going to end up living in this city. And I think you're going to see, for sure, much more diversity than we currently have in the city. We have started an anti-racism task force, and I'm very pleased that they're moving ahead. And I think that we've also, the Town and Gown Committee asked city staff to take a look at our processes for people applying to city committees, to take a look and see how we can build more diversity into that system. Because we don't want to have anything that structurally or systematically discriminates against anyone. So that's the kind of thing we have to work on with our communities. We've also started working with the county on It Starts With Me. And interestingly enough, I chair the Heritage Committee, and at our very last meeting last week, the recommendation that came out of that was, you know, we really need to have our Indigenous community, members that live in Barrie, be involved in the Heritage Committee. I mean, what could be more obvious than that? But, you know, it's something that really hasn't happened very much. And so we really need to invite people to become engaged and to create awareness and to draw people in to the decision-making process of the city. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Ann-Marie, you're up.
Thanks, Rob. From a growth perspective, and tied to the official plan and specific to Ward 3. So we know we boundary on Bayfield, the 400 highway is our south end, and then we tie right up into Ward 1 with Clare around the Georgian Drive area. And we've got roads for intensification identified in Ward 3 and seed areas, which are for employment. So we know Kundals and Bayfield and that kind of Georgian Drive, Duckworth intersection are going to be kind of key areas that will impact growth. So for me, the priority is, how do we do that well? How do we do that with incentivizing green infrastructure and policies and good growth? We are in Ward 3 on the Northeast End, an established neighborhood. And so the biggest priorities there when we talk about growth is, what does infill look like? And how do we support change management and how that happens, and with resident feedback. That's genuine engagement with residents. The other piece when I think about where we're going and doing growth well is really sticking to some of the very strategic, well-informed, evidence-based strategies that staff have put together. So let's not rip and replace some of the good aspects that are happening now and that staff are actually being recognized for. So asset management plans, the financial strategy and framework, our climate adaptation plan, these are pretty significant guideposts and directional resources that we should be following. The other piece around how to eliminate systemic barriers, in addition to what Claire shared, my background, you know, for me comes out of communication, comes out of working with caregivers and patients, but also has training in Indigenous cultural safety and anti-racism and discrimination. So I see myself as a lifelong learner, and making sure that council is an open door, gets educated and informed, and can actually support making space for people to feel like they're at the table. And a big piece of that, when I informed the age-friendly community plan years ago, we haven't really seen that part of the conversation. That touches everything from health to navigation to transit. And we kind of put it under the umbrella of seniors. And so where do we actually get more creative and say accessibility just shouldn't be a conversation around a table that doesn't include other aspects? Seniors, I think in the past year, most of our conversation was on housing. And so I think we could prioritize looking at an all age friendly plan and strategy, and maybe a formal committee table that actually looks at that. We have EMA, the Ethnic Mosaic Alliance, we've got people looking at actual bringing in and embracing the cultural diversity of our communities. We need to hear from them more around the table, including our youth. And in addition to, okay.
Thanks, Ann-Marie.
You're welcome. I got so many ideas.
I know it is a challenge, and I would gladly sit here and listen to both you talk for 10 minutes on each question, but in the interest of everybody's time. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start taking some questions that have come in through the chat, through the Q&A panel. So again, we welcome more questions as well. So we have a couple to get us started. And we also have some questions that came in via email over the course of the week. So we're going to get to those as well too. So we're going to put about 2 minutes on this, give or take a little bit on each question. And Ann-Marie, we're going to start with you this time. This one's specifically Ward 1, 2, and 8 on this, but I think everybody's feedback is valuable because it impacts the city as a whole. So in wards 1, 2, and 8, they have a large population of heritage homes and heritage tree canopy. Would you support a private tree bylaw to protect our older mature trees? And would you support creating a heritage conservation district in the downtown or other locations such as the Grove or Allendale, etc.? Ann-Marie, if you can start first.
I love that idea about a heritage conservation district. I would love to know more about that. I was pleased to be part, and Claire was very active around this. So kudos to you, Claire, but also bringing it forward to our active transportation sustainability committee that I sat on with Living Green. And we had, in addition to that, and knowing some issues in Ward 8, and residents got very involved, and also compliments to them around helping to amplify that this is important. Our older tree canopy is significant. I mean, you can't replace some of our mature trees. And so I'm very excited to be hearing a bit about what's coming back from the public consultations. So staff were given the direction. Claire and I both supported that. I feel very strongly about strengthening a bylaw around protecting our tree canopy, especially our mature trees. And I would like to go a little bit further. So I've been doing a lot of learning with Living Green Barrie, and I think we also need to look at our development approaches. So when we're compacting soil and looking at all of the development happening, we can plant as many trees as we like. But if we actually don't consider the ground in which we're looking to plant them, and if that's actually, we can spend all the money in the world on mature, beautiful trees or replacement trees, or but if we actually don't pay attention to green infrastructure and preparing the soil appropriately to make sure that those trees survive, we're seeing some outcomes that are not desirable. And so we've been doing a lot of planning around the city around supporting our biodiversity in our official plan. And what will be important coming this fall, I believe, will be the policies that tie to our natural heritage. And that has become more of a priority around urban design guidelines and protectionistic approach. So we know from anything from trees, but just the habitat, but also the warming from an environmental factor, the benefits to quality of life and well-being, and also how we enjoy our neighborhoods. So thank you for asking the question. Absolutely, yes. And would love to know more about the elements of a heritage conservation district.
Thank you very much. Claire, we look forward to your response.
Yeah, my response is very simple. Yes and yes. The tree bylaw, private tree bylaw, I think is long overdue. We have some issues in that regard. I think we need to also plant more trees. And I'd like to start a little project actually in each ward, and by the end of the next term, have no missing street trees at all. And what I would really like to do is I would like to involve the people that live on the street to care for those trees. Because what you see is that you'll see a tree being planted, and 4 or 5 years later, that tree is struggling to survive. And then we cut it down and we plant another one, and we haven't learned a thing. And so we really need to look at our whole tree system and put a little more energy and money behind it, because from a climate change point of view, it's one of the what you might call low-hanging fruit. In terms of the conservation heritage Heritage Conservation District. Yeah, I think, in fact, Heritage Committee was talking about it at our last meeting. And we've asked staff to bring back a report on it. How do we go about it? And what are some candidate sites? We designate heritage buildings, individual buildings, but there are lots of areas where it's the whole streetscape, where you have kind of a mix of buildings, or you have a series of buildings, but it's also the trees and just how it all fits together. And a heritage conservation district is not one that is kind of like putting it in the deep freeze. What it is something that will give you guidance as to how to protect this area and how to blend new development in with it. So yeah, we've started on that, and I'd love the opportunity to continue. Great,
thank you very much. Yeah, I've never heard of the idea of a heritage conservation district, so it's a very great question to come forward. How can we make our downtown business accessible? Almost every downtown storefront has a physical barrier. Claire, if you can respond first, please.
Yeah, and that, talk about history, right? I mean, early builders never thought about making stores accessible. And I'm sure that there are some really good ideas out there. I have seen some of those with the little ramps that they put in front of the doors. Some of them are tripping hazards. I think we've made some improvement in the downtown area with the rebuilding of Dunlop Street that we did a few years ago. But I agree with you, there's still a fair bit more to do. I would be interested in talking with the Sustainability Committee, putting that item on their agenda and saying, come up with 10 or 15 ideas that would help us get this done. Because unless downtown is accessible, it isn't accessible. And that goes for a wide variety of disabilities. And again, it goes back to the toddler and the senior. If you can make downtown accessible to each one of those, you've accomplished quite a bit. Yeah, I think we have more work to do on that.
Thank you very much. Ann-Marie.
Thank you for the question. So I guess I'm thinking a little bit more broadly, not just in the physical accessibility, but we've seen even where some of our downtown businesses have received kind of a spotlight recognition through the Accessibility Committee. And I think one was Homestead around sensory, or changing or putting timelines in where things would be quiet or maybe no music was played. And so when we think about our deafened community, when we think about individuals that are not comfortable in spaces where there's a certain noise or lighting. So how do we look at that overall? We've got a strong downtown Barrie Business Association. Would love to engage with them around areas in which our local businesses see opportunity, and what actually falls in some of the things we can change or some of the things we can support. So I even love the open air Dunlop around just making it pedestrian friendly. And seeing a lot of great feedback there. We're looking at even accessibility from, how do we change some of our curbs? How do we change the timing on our lights to make sure people can get across the road safely and with enough time? But other considerations I think are also around, what role can we have around supporting some of the changes that are prioritized? I know we've seen some improvements from a safety and accessibility. And that has been more from lighting and painting and some of the art focus that we've seen to brighten some of the spots. We've had Barrie Police engaged in looking at going through some of the alleys and other areas. We have seen concerns about even the type of design of our sidewalks when they heave around some of the kind of the bricks or cobblestone areas. And so how are we replacing that and actually providing spots for people to stop and rest? Be it benches or different ways in which we allow people to actually have stops along the way. So I would love to actually be involved in those conversations and see if there are particular areas of priority And if we can move that directly to the accessibility committee, but also if the BIA has some opportunities for us to be a partner in.
Great. Thank you very much. Another really impactful question has just come in. And the meeting started with a land acknowledgement. And Councillor Riepma mentioned he chairs a heritage committee with the city. Why then is there no interest to protect the Molson Village site, a Huron-Wendat settlement of over 500 people that Smart Centers plans to develop and pave over off of Bryan Drive and Harvey Road? I hear a lot of talk about reconciliation and connecting with Indigenous communities, but when it comes to actually protecting a heritage site here within the city limits, there is little interest and no action. Does either candidate plan to take any interest to protect this heritage site? Ann-Marie, if you can answer first, please.
Sure. Well, I guess I would say that's new and important information that I wasn't aware of. So of course, you know, even around council, when we're getting development proposals, that coming from staff and staff awareness. So I guess my first immediate response in thinking through that is that's of concern. And how do we make sure staff are aware of that? And is there an opportunity I don't fully appreciate the scope of that village site, or if that's being investigated to date, or if it's been raised and recognized at a staff level. So that can be part of the consideration review of any type of development consideration. So I would say, yes, I'm eager to learn and know more, but I would also encourage, because I believe that is a development that has recently come forward, that does get escalated up to staff for awareness.
Great, thank you. Claire.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I recall that application starting out and coming through our system. And I think at the moment, and I may be wrong about this, but I think at the moment the application is with our staff for consideration. So we expect probably to get a report sometime next year. And I would think that one of the requirements would be an archaeological report, cultural heritage report, and to figure out how that site should be protected and what is to be done with it. And the Ministry of Culture, Tourism, and Sport is the one that is responsible for archaeological sites, and every development has to deal with these things, and so I am sure that that is being considered. Now, I don't know the details of that one, and I think that it would be really great if the person that asks the question contacted staff and asked them about where this stands and what is happening. And by all means, talk to your local councillor and to any of the other council members about the concerns, because these kinds of things I'm sure are being dealt with, but maybe not dealt with to the extent that is appropriate. So thanks for raising that and shining some light on it. And I think you really need to continue to do that so that people understand the importance of it.
Great, thank you. And actually, there's been a response why you've both been answering this. So I'm going to read that response. It says, I have been raising this issue to staff for 10 years and I get a polite thank you. I presented to the Heritage Committee with the same result. So, I think this kind of engagement is awesome. I'm glad people are taking advantage of this forum to make this available, and I hope that this person will continue to try to raise awareness. I'm going to just jump in to say something. There's a tool in Barrie called User Voice, and I don't remember the website, but if you go to the Barrie City website, you should be able to search and find it there. And it is a way to bring an issue up to the public and get the public to commit votes to it. And the city, and I'm sure the two of you can correct me if I'm wrong about something here. The city has, once it gets a certain number of votes, they guarantee to look into the issue. So I would really encourage anybody who has an idea for the city to go out there and use that tool and get people who are like-minded to upvote that and get our city talking about it. I think it's a great word. And sorry, James just sent me the link here. It's barrie.uservoice.com. And if you go there, you might see that there are other people already raising similar issues, or you might see a new issue that you would like to lend your support behind. So again, this engagement is really what this is all about. So really appreciate that. So I'm going to go with a couple questions that have come in from emails from people. So one of the questions is, given that the city of Barrie has declared a climate emergency in 2019, what specific climate action policy will you champion that will have an immediate impact on reducing GHG emissions within our city operations? Claire, if you can start, please.
Okay, and let me just go back to the previous question. If you want to email me directly and put it on my plate, then I would be very happy to follow up with that. The greenhouse gas question, yes, it's a climate emergency. Yes, we need to definitely do something about it. I have been championing the city moving to more electric vehicles, excuse me, and more electric equipment in their operations, and that in fact is starting to happen. And as old gas equipment is being as it gets older, it tends to be replaced with electric. If we can do it. We also have 2 electric buses coming. So those are kinds of things that are starting to move the needle just a little bit. I have been sort of pushing everyone in the public to consider, when your lawnmower dies, your gas lawnmower, to buy a battery powered one. I have one. I've had it for a dozen years and it's working just fine. And no oil to change, and no noise, and no greenhouse gas. So those are the kinds of things that I think, as a city, everyone in the city can do something like that, and we should promote that. I've also talked about our street tree program, and that I would like to really move forward, because I think in a way that's also low-hanging fruit that we can make happen. Yeah, I'd like to have more electric charging stations scattered throughout the city to encourage more EV cars. I think one of the things that I do want to remind everybody is that really we don't want more cars. We just want to switch them from gasoline to electric. And the object of the exercise is to have a city that doesn't cater to cars, but caters to people.
Great, thank you for that. Ann-Marie.
Thank you. In complement to that, I mean, there are a couple of pieces we're seeing really great resident engagement that tie into like livable, sustainable spaces. And I think if we pay attention to some of those areas and make sure that this climate adaptation plan and implementation strategy is one that we can actually support people to be hopeful about. And so there are a lot of pieces that were presented to council by Adam, who is continuing on in this work, and will bring back some kind of the strategies forward. And our biggest question at council was, okay, so like, how do we help residents adopt behavior? So we're seeing Living Green Barrie as an example. There are Tread Lightly events around introducing people to electric vehicles, doing some myth busting about what you can actually do in your own home. There's free access to information or webinars about what we can do at a residential level. At a city level, I think the biggest piece that I would really love to see us be successful at as we implement the new official plan is green infrastructure incentivization. So we need to protect our green spaces. We need to stop massive paving for parking. We should be looking at strategies to actually look at opportunities to change the way in which we use unused parking spaces that just heat up and have an impact. And we can actually be doing some really great incentivization opportunities. Toronto has, I think, green infrastructure policies. We could be more progressive, and there's great opportunity for us to put policies towards the new official plan and look at development, not just from the built form and the materials, but also the cycle of building to maintaining it. So all the way from our different systems and infrastructure to what proportion of that property actually is landscaped with native species and supports appropriate water flow, and that we can ensure that our water quality is protected. Outside of that, I think overall from a biodiversity, we should be very protective of our natural heritage and the quality of our water. And from a greenhouse gas emission, leading the way. So again, from a transit, incentivizing ridership, bike lanes that actually feel safe to ride in, right? So we know we have not been successful about becoming a bike-friendly city for the past 2 applications.
Thanks,
We've just
Ann-Marie.
Oh, you're welcome.
Both of you have some great ideas that just keep coming out. Okay, so another question that's come up is, what is your opinion about having more high-density condo or apartments in the city of Barrie? Do you believe that we should keep building the city up or out with annexed land? Ann-Marie, if you can start first, please.
Up. So, I mean, it's tough because we want to incentivize good infill, but we can't control what developers come to the table with. And I know I hear from residents a lot of frustration with that. And we've got really great information. So Simcoe County, Greenbelt Coalition, we know the concerns about sprawl. We know the concerns about losing agricultural land that we'll never get back. We know the impact that that has around our ability to even build 15-minute communities. So I think good infill is appropriate, and there are areas we can do that very, very well. Part of that Affordable Housing Task Force recommendation, as an example, knowing Bayfield is a highway corridor and boundaries Ward 3 and Ward 4, is an example that was identified in that report to look at how do we actually look at commercial property and leverage it for residential, and where is it appropriate to be building up within an area where we can balance height and proximity and the feeling of connected communities with what's already existing. So we know there are sensitivities that we hear from residents around, we're not opposed to development, but how do we appreciate what is appropriate or seen to be appropriate around creating still good line of sight and beautiful neighborhoods where people can actually navigate well and feel like it fits within the neighborhood. I'm not sure if that's my end or okay.
Great,
thanks.
Thank you very much. Claire, if you can respond, please.
Yeah, I do think that for sure we have to go up in the city in order to meet our density targets and our population targets. The province has said thou shalt accommodate 300,000 people, and this is how you're more or less going to do it, and we have to figure out the details. So I think that it is important to intensify downtown, for example, because we need more people living downtown. Downtown is the heart of the city, and more people down there will support the businesses that are there and will create a more of a vibrant hub in the city. In the annexed lands, if you look at the approvals that have been given over the last number of years, you will find that they are far denser than the approvals that were given before that. So when the annexed lands are starting to get built out, you will see that the density there is far higher than in other parts of South Barrie. I think that our planning staff are orchestrating that in terms of trying to fit everyone into the land space that we have, because I don't think we should ever expand the city onto agricultural land. Now, that also leaves the existing neighborhoods that we have, and in Ward 1 especially, there's a fair bit of controversy about infill development. And I think what we need to do is we need to very carefully evaluate the development that's proposed to make sure that it fits in with the neighborhood, as Ann-Marie said. I don't find in Ward 1 that there's a real resistance to infill development that fits into the neighborhood. There's real resistance to development that doesn't. And I think that we are looking to build walkable communities with enough density to make it an interesting and vibrant place.
Right. Thank you very much. I have a couple more questions to ask. I'm going to open the floor. Just if anybody has any last minute questions they'd like to squeeze in, please go ahead and use our QA panel. But barring that, we've got 2 more questions for you. Claire, so you'll respond to this one first. What do you see as the role of our libraries within the issues that we've already been discussing this evening, such as attracting youth, serving seniors, assisting the homeless, etc.?
All of the above and then some. Frankly, I mean, I love libraries. I think they are really integral into our city. And, you know, they're far more than going there to borrow a book. That is what they used to be. But today, they are really a cultural center, and they draw in, and they work hard at drawing in parents and children, students. I know that they have a lot of programs that they try to draw in Georgia College students, for example. And I think that libraries play a really important role in helping people sorting out the kinds of things that they want to do. I mean, they have all kinds of resources there. If you don't have a computer, you can sit there and work on one there. If you want to learn how to play an instrument, they have them there. So it's like, I think libraries are almost an untapped resource. I think that there's a whole lot more we could do with our library, and they can really function as a community hub to bring people together for meetings, for classes, for learning. I think there's a real opportunity there still, but they already do a great deal. If you look at their publications and what they have on their website, you'll see that there's an awful lot of stuff there that you can get involved in and learn from.
Great, thank you very much. Ann-Marie, please.
I think we're pretty fortunate. So I'm a huge fan of the Barrie Public Library, and I've been touting for some time some reading that I've been doing, and I thought, you know, this book I have is just colored and underlined and flagged, and it's called Palaces of the People. And it talks about libraries as one key example of just social infrastructure, right? Like how do you, how libraries play a role within your communities around resiliency and diversity. So I mean, I remember moving to Barrie 20 years ago, and you got the welcome wagon with like different information. I'm like, anyone moving to Barrie or buying a home or moving for work, you know, hopefully walks through the doors of our library. It's incredible. We've just seen them open kiosks in our rec centers. So in Ward 3, we've got now, you can go, membership to library if you're a Barrie resident is free. The library is making accessible, especially coming out of COVID, and parents that I'm hearing and kids that are struggling, coming back to school, be it being behind or just supporting kind of time on task, they do free tutoring. The amount of resources, I've been connected with individuals who have been experiencing the housing insecurity. and they are a couple of steps away from getting their identity or replacing a driver's license or replacing formal ID so they can actually support reintegration back. And the Barrie Public Library is one of the #1 resources that we have, individuals kind of coming in and having a safe place to go. So it's incredible. We're even seeing libraries being staffed with social service workers. And so what they do on a day-to-day is incredible. I think they need to be protected as a core community infrastructure resource. And I'm very pleased to see the growth that we've invested in at the Holly Center and others. But there's nowhere that you really don't see the library touching some of the initiatives, activities, and supports, both for people of all ages.
Great, thank you both. It's I find that was an interesting question because so often you're trying to figure out, where does municipal politics play a role? Where does federal politics? Where does provincial politics? But the library, that's a municipal thing, right? So it's this, even the education from these sessions about trying to, for everybody to get a handle of, when I'm voting for you as a councillor, what am I voting for? So these are great and informative. So we'll tie this sort of up. I know you'll also have some time to do some closing statements from yourselves too, but I think, and maybe this might overlap a little bit, but as we talk about engagement and getting out and getting our voices heard with our councillors, the question is, as a councillor, what will you do to make sure the public is listened to and involved with local decision making? Ann-Marie, if you can go first, please.
Sure. So for me, it's about being responsive. So I'm going to answer your emails. I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to be curious. So I believe in nonpartisan representation. So I think that's important. So residents know that what matters to them matters to me. And there's no different kind of value assessment based on that, but helping to actually work through processes and or improve them. So how do you get comfortable thinking about making a deputation to council? How can I support you in preparing for that? How do I make sure you have a way forward to get answers to questions? We've got an amazing Service Barrie team. We've got an amazing clerk's office, but be it through me, if I'm not working for you, hopefully I am around, representing you. But, if you're going through Service Barrie and you're not getting what you need, using me. So I'm one tool in the toolkit. And it's very important for me to be connected to residents and for residents to know me and to feel that I'm accessible to them and I can represent them well. And I think the biggest piece to that is just educating, communicating, and managing expectations. What can I do as a representative, as one vote out of 10 from a number of councillors? And so it's also making sure I won't make promises, but I will definitely create pathways, and I will support educating, informing, and involving residents in every aspect. And I use social media broadly. And if that doesn't work for people, I'll come and have a coffee. I'll walk with you in the ward. Whatever works for individuals works for me, from a way in which you need to communicate or you're comfortable sharing what matters to you. And so hopefully people have felt that that has worked for them. And for me, it's just, I'm at council. I'm at the meetings. I'm reading the information. I'm understanding the impact both to the residents, but also the long-term well-being of all citizens and our businesses. So I hope people have seen that. And it's important for me to show up for you professionally and respectfully.
Great. Thank you. Claire.
One thing I really love about this job is the fact that in Ward 1, there's never a shortage of advice or opinions. And I love that. I encourage people, pick up the phone, call me, send me an email, text me, however you want to get a hold of me, do that. I think what happens is that it gives me the opportunity to hear from people, and just knocking on, I don't know what I've knocked on, 5,000 to 6,000 houses so far. And I've kept a list of all the little comments that I've gotten over the last couple of months, and it's wonderful. You know, there are little ideas that you can put to work and use to improve the community. And I really encourage people to always connect with me. I'm always very interested in engaging people. One of the things that I hear at the door a lot is how much people appreciate my newsletters. I send out a newsletter spring and fall, and just updating some of the highlights in the ward. And you know, the interesting thing is I get a lot of reaction from that, saying, oh, you know, what about this? What about that? And I think that is really the key to democracy. I really enjoy it. And I think, frankly, council touches the lives of the ordinary citizen more than any other level of government. We supply, I've heard, 60 different services, and you know, the chances are that the councillor will be responsible for some of it. Yeah, I just love being a councillor and love hearing from people all the time, and it's really helpful. Appreciate that a lot.
Great, thank you very much. So with that, we'll give you both 2 minutes to sort of give a summary of, you know, of your goals, objectives. I think a lot of things have been said this evening, but if we've missed anything, please fill us in. Claire, if you can start first, please.
Sure. Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground today. And like has been said, I mean, we could probably talk for 10 minutes on each of these subjects, simply because, yeah, we've just scratched the surface on a lot of stuff. I guess, you know, one of the things that I've sort of focused on is, and we tend to focus on, is the issues in our ward. And just a couple of things on that. I mean, we've probably heard a lot about speeding cars and noisy mufflers. And council has approved moving forward with speed cameras in school zones. The province allows us to do that. And so we're going to do that. That should help in the school zone areas. I would like to have that discussion with our colleagues at the province to see if we can expand speed camera control, because I think we certainly can't afford to have a policeman on every corner all the time, and speed cameras would do a great deal. I think the same thing goes with noisy mufflers. I'd really like to get some provincial legislation that would stop people from selling them, and that would, I think, help all of us a great deal. I think that there are some citywide issues that we also need to think about, and that is downtown. I think downtown, as I've said earlier, is the heart of the city. We've done a lot of physical work there, and it looks great. People are enjoying it. Open Air Dunlop is a roaring success. I would like to see more done downtown in terms of programming. On Meridian, on the stage there, and other places in the downtown. I think there's still a lot of opportunity there to advance programming, and I think that will also support our businesses down there. I'm looking forward to some more development downtown so that we can get more people there. Hopefully we get a grocery store at some point. I guess one last item that I'd like to talk about, because people do talk about these things, and that is taxes. I'm not making any promises about taxes. I think that it's important to provide the services that residents need, and we can't provide services without any money. At the same time, I think it's important to make sure that Barrie stays within the sort of the medium average range of taxation throughout the province, and we have to be careful with that. So with that, I think that summarizes where I'm coming from.
Great, thank you very much. Ann-Marie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I shared a little bit about myself, so I'll talk more in the time I have left about the focus on Ward 3. And some of the areas we've been working on, I hope to continue, is really addressing high-level concerns from residents. And so I've been working closely with Barrie Police, and probably one of the most common thing I hear is, where are they? And that's because Ward 3 has seen a change just in the relocation of the police building use on Sperling. And so, of course, we're going to see perhaps less frequency than you may have. But we've been leveraging our community safety and wellbeing officer, our citizens on patrol. We're seeing residents getting engaged with that team. Individuals are talking a bit about what's important to them around how they feel in their neighborhoods. We've seen some changes, and so we are looking at everything from traffic safety to the noisy mufflers, but also graffiti. So we've actually had a lot of work through Barrie Police do a sweep through the ward to identify all locations and have a plan I hope to share forward with residents soon around how to support individuals that have had some vandalism on their private property. So more on that, but that ties into my focus on neighborhood well-being. How do you feel about places you purchased? I've talked to residents about, you know, struggling with some of the bike lanes that were put in, and what does change in parking on road mean to them? So how do we feel and think a bit about the changes we make with city master plans at a resident level? I have significant green space and the gem of Little Lake. Sometimes we forget about that from our city conversations. And there was a Little Lake master plan I hope to bring back that was not implemented, that would have been done if it was funded as approved, I think by now. And so it's looking at natural spaces, heritage, working with Nature Barrie and others, including Living Green. We've been doing some planting to add to biodiversity, but making sure that that's protected space. And then lastly, when we talk a bit about affordability, so doing everything I can to be part of a conversation and raising concerns about how to live well. So Barrie should be a place that you can choose to live in if you want to live in, that you can choose to work in if you want to work in, and that it's a place you can age well in. And so that for me is a broad lens in which I take to look at a resident level. How are you doing? What matters to you, and how I can be an advocate for you.
Great, thank you very much.
Welcome.
I'm just going to bring everybody on screen here. I just want to thank both candidates for taking the time this evening to be with us. Also want to thank the attendees for some great questions and their engagement. That's what this is all about. We hope you encourage your friends and neighbors to get out there and vote, because that's the first step of engagement. A lot of us can't or don't have the energy or the time to get as involved as we'd like, but that vote is the very first step. I also, I've had the privilege of being involved in most of these all candidates meetings, and it's really great to see the variety of answers and the vision for candidates across the city. I really encourage attendees and actually the potential candidates, potential counselors as well, to go watch some of the pre-recorded, some of the recordings that we've had from these. I think it's really, for me, it gives me another way to look at, okay, so somebody said this in this ward, but that kind of affects me too. What does my potential counselor think of that in my ward? So these ideas and sharing ideas across the city is great, because we're not just these isolated pockets. So again, thank you to all the candidates that have taken part. And again, encourage everybody to visit engagebarrie.org and see the information that we have available there. Thank you again.